Hi, my name's MJ. I'm a trans man. I started my transition about probably 10 years ago or so, and I figured I'd answer some of the most common questions I get on here. So, by far, the most common question I get asked is, how did you know you were trans? Probably not how you think. I'm from a small town in New Hampshire. I didn't even know there was such a thing as being trans when I was a kid. Sure, I knew something wasn't right and I felt insecure, angry, out of place, but not once was I able to piece together, like, oh, I'm transgender. I was born in the wrong body. That wasn't even in my vocabulary. I had never even met a trans person that I know of until I was like 16 years old. It wasn't until I was 16 years old and met my first trans person that like it was a huge revelation for me. Cause for one, like a lot of things that I just felt made me so abnormal, like I was slowly realizing like, hey, you might be trans. Like I said, that wasn't even a consideration before. And a lot of people have stories like mine. It's just a lot of people are afraid to talk about it because in the media, we're typically only shown people who knew, like, when they were kids, like, I was born in the wrong body. And although those stories are absolutely valid and it does happen, I think the reason why we only see these stories is because they're more digestible. As trans people, we already face so much backlash that as a community, you don't want people, like, finding ways to invalidate your identity. And if people say, well, I didn't realize till later in life, some people I think feel as though that gives wiggle room for others to say, like, well, then you're not really trans or it's not a real thing. Another question I get asked that's kind of relevant to the previous question is, when did you know it was time to start your medical transition? I actually remember two instances that really stick out to me that were drivers in my decision to start testosterone and start the process for top surgery. I have not been on testosterone for years, but I was for like 3 years into my transition. The first instance that I had, which I look really bad in it, but honestly, I'm just being transparent that this is what happened. As a masculine lesbian, I was what's referred to as a touch me not, basically like in any intimate settings, like I did not want people touching me at all. Unfortunately, a lot of people, including in the lesbian community, including in the trans community, are not like always super respectful of that. Well, one day I was sort of like dating this girl, getting to know her, whatever, and obviously this is before my transition. I hadn't had top surgery yet, and she made a comment about my chest, and she meant it as a compliment. Um, I didn't take it that way. I can't explain to you the amount of disgust and anger I felt in that moment. I did keep composed. I composed myself. However, literally, I cut stuff off with her, and I know a lot of people would think that's unwarranted, but after that, like for years, still thinking about that, like it made my skin crawl. But because I had like such a drastic internal reaction to a comment like that, it really opened my eyes to how bad my dysphoria really was. I would try to brush it off like, no, I'm just a masculine lesbian. I just don't want people looking at me like that. But it was time to look a little deeper. So then the second thing is I started looking into top surgery as a masculine lesbian, which some masculine lesbians do, but I felt so guilty for it. And I'm sure that's tied to the fact that I didn't want to come to terms with the fact that I was transgender because it's complicated. I have a son. I was worried, like, how is it going to affect him? How's my family going to react? Just honestly seemed like a burden that I just really wanted to avoid at that moment. But every night I would research top surgery and, like, the different options and everything, research like surgeons and stuff. And the next morning I would feel so guilty that I'd feel sick to my stomach, like nauseous. Feeling that guilt paired with the dysphoria, like honestly, it did affect my stability. And I couldn't have that as a parent. That's when I made the decision, like, it's time to just go for it. I mean, what's the difference? So I start my medical transition and some people don't approve? Okay. I mean, people could already tell that I was struggling. If they're gonna think that anyways, then why not do what's best for me and my child? Because being a present parent means being a stable parent, and transitioning allowed me to do that. Another question I get asked is, do you ever miss like presenting feminine or being a woman? Because I did present like ultra feminine for a good portion of my life, not definitely not my whole life, but a good portion. I do not. I do sometimes miss the excitement of like, because I would change so much. Like I would like overhaul my hair, my makeup, my entire look. I was constantly changing. So I remember the excitement of that. And like sometimes I miss that. It's a little nostalgic. Would I ever want to go back? No. Because not only did I feel uncomfortable, but it was so time consuming. So if you've been following me for a long time, you know that there was a short period after like 3 years into my transition where I had to stop testosterone. I detransitioned for about a month and a half. It was not a fun time. I did not want to detransition. I felt like I didn't really have a lot of options. I've talked about it in depth on here. So another question people ask is like, do you think you'll ever detransition again? And where I'm standing right now, I want to say, oh no, absolutely not. Well, I tend to be a very analytical person, and I mean, realistically, if you look at the numbers, there's a good chance I would again. I mean, think about it. I'm only 35 years old, and I have detransitioned. And realistically, I've lived what, like half my life. Hopefully, a little less than that. Although I am a little hefty, so. But there is a chance I could again if you look at those numbers. And also, if it came to like my family's safety or my ability to have gainful employment, like I would detransition if I had to. Lastly, I get asked a lot about how my son adjusted to my transition. To be honest, there wasn't really a big adjustment at all. I transitioned when my son was very young. He doesn't even remember me before. But like I said, I even detransitioned for a short period, and it's not, I don't know, like, I think people expect it to be this, like, huge, grand, traumatic, insane thing, and, that's not been my experience as a parent. Once in a while, he'll ask questions. It hasn't, like, horrifically impeded on his life or anything. My kid does great in school. Not only does he get great grades, but he's very social, has so many friends, and everybody is just so fantastic with him. We have a great community. And like I said, I live in New Hampshire, so New Hampshire is not super LGBT friendly, if you haven't been here. So for people to be that accepting and welcome my son and us with open arms, like that says a lot. It wasn't like that when I was growing up. So it's really cool that we have that now.